After House of Wax, Vincent's career in horror would slowly but surely begin to play a more and more prominent role in his acting career. While he still mainly worked in thrillers, dramas, and even the occasional spy movie, Price would time and again come back to horror and sci-fi, each time bringing a greater success than the last. In 1954, he would star in a second 3D horror movie, The Mad Magician, a Columbia Films production which, if I'm being brutally honest, basically feels like a less interesting House of Wax. Both films share very similar themes, both have similar endings, and both are packed with 3D gimmicks that, while great in their original presentation, are distinctly dull and border irritating in their 2D format. It's not a bad movie by any stretch, but it's nothing to write home about either. In 1958, 20th Century Fox would release The Fly, a B-movie classic, which, by modern standards, is a bit of a campy creature feature horror fest, but at the time, it was great. But it would be in 1959 when Vincent's horror credentials would be well and truly set in stone when he starred in two features helmed by the master of gimmick cinema himself, William Castle. The first, House on Haunted Hill, is a classic Vincent Price horror movie, mixing surreal imagery and the tension of a whodunit to create a wonderfully bizarre viewing experience. One that I'd love to see complete with gimmicks in action in a cinema someday. But today, we're going even better than that, as we talk about 1959's The Tingler, one of my all-time favourite B-movies. The plot, while not unusual for science fiction horror cinema of the time, is just wonderfully bizarre. We follow pathologist Dr. Warren Chapin. Warren's worked as a mortician for years, and there's a particular phenomenon that's always bothered him. Some of the cases that come in, especially ones with traumatic backgrounds, sometimes appear to show that the victim's ribcage has been ruptured, almost like something's been trying to escape. Warren spent years trying to figure out exactly what causes this bizarre incident, but almost always ends up drawing a blank. We pick up with Warren as he's in the middle of running an autopsy on a recently executed inmate. Mid-operation, a friend of the inmate's family drops by the clinic to speak to Warren, mainly to see how the inmate died, but also to talk about death and the abnormalities that Warren's found over the years. The relation, Ollie, in passing, dubs this possible phenomenon the Tingler. Warren likes the name, so the Tingler it is. After speaking for a while longer, Warren offers to drive Ollie home, and when they arrive, Warren discovers that Ollie and his wife live next door to and operate a rather lush-looking cinema that shows old silent-era movies. Warren's very impressed with the place and wants to know more, so Ollie invites him up for a drink. And it's here that the film really begins to kick into gear. While waiting for his drink, Ollie tells Warren that his wife is deaf and mute. She can't hear, she can't speak, and she most definitely can't scream. Which is proven later on in the same scene when Warren accidentally cuts himself on a broken coffee mug, leading to Ollie's wife Martha to violently panic because she has no way to release her fear, and then she passes out. It turns out that Martha is deathly afraid of blood, and this fascinates Warren. Later that evening, he goes home and briefly chats to Lucy and David. Lucy is his sister-in-law, and David works with Warren in studying the Tingler phenomenon. Warren tells David about Martha's situation, and he begins to ponder aloud what exactly would happen if you terrified a person who couldn't scream so much that they simply passed out with fright. Either way, Lucy and David head out for the evening, but not before David gives Warren some chemicals he requested. Well, one chemical really, LSD, which will play a key role later. Anyway, it's here that we meet Warren's partner, or wife, Isabel. And, well, she's a dick. That's basically the only way to sum her up, really. She drinks excessively, cheats on Warren openly and unabashedly. It's implied that she killed her father for her and her sister's inheritance money, and because her sister isn't of age yet to receive that inheritance, Isabel holds it over Lucy, regularly demanding that she do things she doesn't want to do, with the threat that her inheritance will be denied to her if she doesn't play ball. Which, given how much Isabel likes to spend, it's a wonder there'll be anything left for Lucy by the time she's old enough to receive it. Warren's clearly had enough of her shit and basically tells her to respect Lucy, to give her their share of the money, and to leave her and David alone to be happy. When she laughs and mocks Warren for even beginning to suggest he has any ounce of control over her, Warren pulls a gun on her and forces her into his laboratory. Once inside, he again reiterates his point and tells Isabel if she refuses to give Lucy what's rightfully hers and back off the young couple, he'll shoot her and make it look like a suicide. When she goes to try and run away, Warren shoots her and Isabel faints. The gun was loaded with blanks, and this was all part of Warren's plan. Acting quickly, he pulls Isabel onto the operating table and begins taking X-rays. And when they're developed, Warren confirms a suspicion he's had for a while. Fear literally causes a parasite to grow and develop within the human body. There's a literal Tingler in everyone. It grows when you're scared, and when you scream, it harms the creature and causes it to return to being just another part of the body. He shows the X-rays to David, and the pair both begin to wonder, well, what happens if you don't scream? Later that night, Warren decides to investigate. By injecting himself with a large dose of LSD, he aims to put himself into a state of total fear, not scream, and see what happens. But, despite his best efforts, the fear is simply too great, and he screams and passes out simultaneously. Lucy and David rush in and care for Warren while he recovers, but this has sown the seeds of a fiendish idea. So, the next day he swings by the cinema, and after talking with Ollie, who has concerns about his wife's sleeping habits, Warren agrees to go and see her. He tells her he's going to inject her with a sedative, but he really injects her with a large dose of LSD. And what follows is probably one of the most memorable sequences, not just in William Castle's filmography, but in B-movie history, as Martha begins to trip and a bizarre sequence plays out in which she grows more and more terrified by the weird and trippy imagery around her, culminating in her passing out hard from sheer terror. Ollie calls Warren, who proclaims her dead at the scene, and using his powers as a mortician, he takes her back to the lab and, following some surgery, is able to remove a full-size, living, breathing Tingler from Martha. And if you want to know what happens next, you've got to see this movie. Because the last act of this film, man oh man, it's so good. Is the script the most consistent and narrative-driven thing in the world? No, absolutely not. This film's pacing is honestly a bit of a mess. There isn't really a clean shift between the first and second acts, and the ending isn't nearly as clean-cut as I'd like. In fact, it's a bit cop-outy. But it doesn't matter. This is a film where you get to see acid scenes played out for the first time in cinema history. You get to see the Tingler, a bizarre indestructible creature that you can only kill by screaming at it. You get to see Vincent Price in one of his most Vincent Priciest roles. The dialogue in this script is near perfect for the tone of this kind of movie, and while the actual plot itself is a bit all over the place, the fact that it's only a bit all over the place in a genre that frequently makes literally no sense at all is really quite wonderful. The script has a really great playful tone. I think it's a super rare example of a horror film that the family could watch. In the sense that it's a simple and creative enough plot that I think kids could really get into it. It's easy on the gore too, so no concerns about little Timmy or Timantha being corrupted. And it's got a charismatic and fun script for grown-ups to get involved in. All the spooky sort of antics that'll keep the whole family enthralled. If you can overlook some of the budgetary limitations of the time, I think this is a script that a lot of people would really get on with. Even if you're watching it in a goofy, self-ironic way, it's fun. The Tingler was directed by William Castle and written by Robb White. And if you saw my review of 13 Ghosts last Halloween, you'll immediately know that if you have Castle on direction and White on script, you've got a match made in heaven. From the grisly larks of Macabre through to psycho-inspired cut-and-thrust adventures within Homicidal, these guys are like peanut butter and chocolate. I don't think I've ever seen this pair produce a bad movie. Gold. These men make gold. And on the direction front, gold. This film's built from the off to pull you into the Gimmick King's world by hook or by crook. Firstly, we need to address the gimmick of this film, Percepto. Basically an industrial strength vibrator that was fitted to multiple seats within the cinema, which, at set times, would be activated at random by the projectionist via a set of switches in the booth. Rather infamously, this was initially tested out on an unfortunate group of nuns by mistake just before the opening day, when the buzzers were fitted to the seats a day early and the projectionist got curious as to what the new switch panel fitted to his booth did. The effect was used at times to create a sense of unease within the theatre, but would more effectively be used during the film's final act. These buzzers, combined with hired stooges who'd sit in the audience and scream and purposefully disrupt the film, mixed to create a truly electrifying experience. To see the Tingler live with stooges and Percepto in place, well and truly is peak cinema. But this film is more than a gimmick. Everyone always talks about the gimmick, but what a lot of people tend to miss is that this movie looks incredible. It's fantastically shot. This is not your standard Ed Wood Poverty Row fodder. This is a Columbia Pictures production, and it oozes mood and atmosphere. Shots are beautifully arranged here, with some being easily good enough to hang on a wall, and the use of lighting to create a predominantly shadowy and moody atmosphere, while probably for cost-saving reasons, here only makes the film that much more powerful a work. It's easy to scoff at Castle's work as a director, but what I saw here was good, solid, and most critically of all, competent filmmaking. The sets don't wobble, the shots are amicable, and the cast perform with a slight hamminess that is fitting for this type of filmmaking. In some ways, I kinda have to argue against it holding the moniker of a B-movie, because barring the actual Tingler itself, which, again, is a result of the limitations of the era, this film, while silly, is very well made. The same can also be said about the cine. Shot compositions are an absolute delight here, and it's really impressive to see how the crew approached this film. There's some wonderful floating tracking shots used throughout that literally sweep you through Warren and Isabel's household. And while it is kind of rigidly set to a 1950s cine standard, basically theatre but shot on camera, this one really tries hard to break the mould and feel like an actual conventional movie. In particular the acid sequences, which are just amazing for the time. I can honestly say I've never seen a 50s movie be quite so bold or brash in its choices of cine or direction. In fact, if I had any complaints, and this is really more of a trope of early cinema productions, I do feel a few more cuts within the sequences really would have made this film go the extra mile. Even if it were just a few more close-ups or mid-shots thrown into the mix, I think it would have helped enhance the scene structure a bit. There are quite a few group-wide shots where people just talk for ages without any kind of cuts or breaks to help shake up the flow. And while that was perfectly common within the context of 50s cinema, I think a bit more variety would have improved the viewing experience significantly. Performance-wise, we are on fire. Vincent Price is in his element here playing Dr. Warren, with an everyman quality that's lovely to see, but with a real sinister spin in places to offset that initial impression. Such as when he's trying to blackmail Isabel, or he's toying with the idea of experimenting on Martha. He plays a complex character in this, and he knows exactly when to be subtle and quiet in his performance, and when to be bombastic. He's an absolute delight. Equally, Patricia Cutts plays Isabel with such a malevolence. She really doesn't care who she hurts or how she does it as long as she gets what she wants out of the situation. And her cold and calculating snidiness really gives you a character here that you love to hate. I think she gives a fantastic performance, and her work with Price in this picture offers easily some of the best tension-driven moments within any of Castle's filmography. The supporting cast are more or less on the money too. I don't specifically recall any dodgy performances, and everyone seems to get and understand the tone that this film's going for. It just works, and it does so really well. In particular, I have to mention Judith Evelyn as Martha in this is just incredible in the role, especially during her acid scene. She's believably terrified, and it makes the experience all the better for it. It's all the more shocking that she unexpectedly died only 8 years after this film was made at the age of 58. Finally, the soundtrack, and it's a clean winner from me. This is a classic 50s string-based orchestral score, and it absolutely knocks it out of the park in its ability to deliver a classy and tonally perfect piece of music to suit this film's calibre. It helps tie the movie together, and I genuinely can't envision this film without it. A sweeping and broad OST that I don't think I'd personally listen to isolated, but I know plenty of people who would. So yeah, big thumbs up from me here. The Tingler, quite bluntly, is must-see cinema for any budding aficionado of alternative cinema history. It's a film that, quite frankly, stands out as completely unique from its peers of the time, and it's infinitely more interesting and entertaining for it. With a loose script that's fluid enough to keep it from going off the rails, astoundingly top-class direction and cine, some really solid, if not a touch hammy performances, and a soundtrack that quite literally is music to my ears. If you haven't seen The Tingler yet, you really need to correct that. An absolute classic of the genre, it's one of my all-time favourite movies, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And, with the party now well and truly underway, join us next week when we finally break into the swinging 60s, and we have a date with the macabre world of Roger Corman. See you there.